Hello, life coaches. It's great to be on the call with you today. I love the subject we're going to talk about, which is how to handle triggers. But first of all, if you would, if you're watching this live, just type live in the comments section. If you're watching it as a replay, type replay. That really helps us a lot. So today we're going to be talking about how to handle triggers when you see them. Last week we talked about triggers. We talked about how to reduce. So this week, we're going to talk about, okay, once you see a trigger, how do you handle it? And so this is part of the Eductive Cycle. And by the way, we're going to give you a worksheet for those of you who want it. So if you'll just type in cycle in the comments section, we'll make sure we get that over to you. So what I have seen around triggers in others and in myself, there are really three frustrations that usually come up. So have you ever had a conversation with someone and you knew that they didn't understand what you were saying, but you didn't know how to handle the trigger that you saw and you weren't able to get them to understand? It's very triggering, right? For usually them and yourself. The other frustration that I've run into, this has happened to me a lot of times around holidays when I get with my family. Everybody starts to talk at the same time. And I know it's from excitement, and sometimes it can be in a heated conversation and people will try to talk at the same time. But nobody gets their thoughts completely heard, completely understood. And so therefore, nobody understands anything that each person has said. And there could be some very valid viewpoints there and some really good knowledge there, but very frustrating. That happens in business meetings a lot. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's negative. And then the third thing I've seen is when you're talking to someone and what the person is trying to communicate to you, you can't grasp it. Either they're using a whole bunch of words you don't understand and they don't see it, they don't pick it up, or either for whatever reason, or they don't care. For whatever reason that is, it's very frustrating for you and probably the person that's trying to explain something at the end of the day. So what is actually wanted? Raul, what do you see that's really, really wanted here?
Hey, hello, Seal, and hello, everybody. And that's really a great question, because in coaching, especially when we're talking about the eductive communication cycle, so what you want, the first thing that you want is that cycle working. In every coaching session that you're delivering, you really want that cycle working. You really want that cycle in, and Seal will teach you about the different steps connected to the cycle, but you want that cycle working every session or in every conversation. The other thing that you want, especially connected to coaching, is you want that cycle working naturally with no effort, just like breathing, right? Like you don't put a lot of attention in how you're breathing, right? Or how you're walking. That's what you want. I mean, you really want to understand this cycle. You really want to use that cycle in every session, in every conversation. You want to master that thing so that it's just naturally. And it works without even thinking about it, with, it's just like breathing, right? And then if that's the case, the other thing that you want is you really want to create in every coaching session, in every interaction, in every conversation or session, you want understanding. That's really what you want. And the other thing that I would say, this is a very powerful frame of reference to see if your communication or your coaching session, it's being effective. If that communication or coaching session, it's being effective, the cycle, which is 3 steps, and Sil will go over those, the cycle is working with no interruptions. But when you start to see the cycle going out, and your communication is not being effective, then you know there's probably a trigger right there. So it's like really, when it's working, you know, the session and everything's just going great. But if it's not, then something's out. There's a big chance that there's probably a trigger there to handle.
Thank you, Raul. And so as you were talking about that, I thought, oh my, I thought about, here's a trigger. I thought about when I start trying to communicate to my team around the technical area. A lot of times I can't find the terminology or what I'm needing help with. And thank God they got a lot of knowledge. They can usually sift through my confusion and sort through what I'm trying to communicate. But watching it can really frustrate me. And also they're so kind and patient with me, but I can tell that they don't always understand why, because I'm not able to get my point across. I don't have all the terminology. So that bogs up the whole communication cycle. So the first point and most important step is you ask a question that the person can understand. And if they don't, like Raul said, there's a trigger somewhere. It may be purely non-comprehension. It may only be one word that they don't have the full meaning of, or either it's triggered something in the past. It's now in the present. And so they're not even here with you. They're back there when that occurred. So that's the first point. Very important point for a coach. I mean, just to have a great relationship is very important. The second point is making sure you get an answer you can understand. If you don't, ask another question so you get clear on your end. Because if you don't, then that's going to make the conversation go south. You're not going to get the level of understanding and the outcome that you're really seeking. So if you don't understand, you make sure that you ask and get their answer clarified so both parties have that complete understanding. And then the third point would be acknowledge the person you're talking to, the person you're having a conversation with, your client, so that they feel that you really get them. You know, I love that expression, like, I know you get me. And man, you feel that when somebody gets you. Doesn't mean they agree. It just means you get them. You can understand where they're coming from. So those are 3 points. And Raul, how would you sum all up?
Yeah, thank you. What I would say on this is almost like dancing. I mean, truly, because when this cycle is working and is working naturally, right? So then there's a pace to the coaching session. There's a rhythm to the conversation, right? Because when you're coaching and it's your turn, right, to direct your client's attention, then you ask a question, right? Or you say something, right? So you're asking a question, but you want them to understand what you're asking. It's your turn, right? And if they do understand what you're asking, then they give you an answer back. And now you understand. It's not both talking at the same time or on top of each other, like Seal was describing. So there's rhythm. I mean, this is basic, but sometimes it's not understood and sometimes it's not used properly. So if you're coaching, it's your turn. Okay, you ask a question, they understand, they come back at you, they give you an answer. Now you're understanding, and like Seal said, that piece, acknowledgement, just saying thank you, I got it, I got you. But truly, you know, from the heart, that's quite important, and it puts a lot of sanity in the whole conversation. It could be a coaching session, it could be a conversation, it could be a meeting. I mean, it could be a meeting, but when people just respect these basics, ask a question you can understand, get an answer that you can understand. Well, ask a question your client can understand, right? And then get an answer that you can understand, and then say thank you. Acknowledge. It's basic, but it makes a whole difference. When that's in place, then understanding takes place. Then because of that, the knowledge, can arrive. And when there's knowledge, then any area or any situation is just going to get better. But it's like dancing. That's what I would say on that.
Uh, Thank you. And as you were explaining that, who I thought about? I thought about parents and kids, because parents do their best a lot of times to teach their kids not to interrupt. But if you really, really want to improve that communication cycle, it's also to give them the same respect and to mirror back to them what you're asking. I know when I'm with my grandchildren, I try my best not to interrupt them and to make them the most important person and the most important conversation in the world when they're speaking to me, and I'm very present and to you. And that will change their behavior because they're always watching and they're always modeling. And if you really want your kids to listen to you and create that respect, if you do it to them, and then also it's a lot easier to get them to do it to you. So I've seen that over and over again. So I just had to plug that. I didn't plan on saying that, but I love kids and love to help parents have a great relationship and an awesome environment to live in every day. So I have a great story that I love this story. I'm so glad this client of ours gave us permission to share this because it's so inspiring. So one of our clients who's been a client with us over a decade, her name is Mrs. Connie, and she owns a network marketing company. And she implemented these techniques years ago in her company, all around effective communication, all around this technique of being able to see triggers because they sell, right? And just to have a life better in general, you need to know this information. So she had us come in there and teach them effective communication and how to handle triggers and what to do with them when you see, and just to be really effective. And Raul was on that team and got to experience this. So Raul, I would love it if you would tell that story. Do you mind?
Yeah, no, it would be my pleasure. And that's really why I was thinking like this is really like dancing, this adaptive communication cycle.
Yeah.
Because back then, I mean, I remember the company was just growing like crazy. And by the way, it was because we were using a lot of these coaching techniques, just to empower, the network and just selling skills and communication skills. So the company was growing like crazy. But I remember that one of the frustrations that she had back then, I mean, sales and income and growth, that was fantastic. But then when we used to have the, like the executive meetings, with the key leaders, oh my God, there was just a lot of bad habits in communication. Just like you said, Sil, somebody's talking and then someone else is interrupting, or cutting the communication. Of course, would upset the other person. Now we're fighting at each other. And those meetings would go just long and long and painful, right? So I remember one of her wants back then, and still is, she said, so production was taking place, but harmony, just like having harmony in those executive meetings and people just understanding each other, that was a big thing,
Yeah.
for her. And I'm sure that it would be a big thing for any leader, right? I mean, for Christ's sake, yes, we want to sell and we want to grow, but we don't want to kill each other in the process, right? So it was amazing to be part of that process and to see how just putting in like, hey, there's a cycle. There are some steps connected to effective communication, and there's a basic cycle, which is the adaptive communication cycle. You ask a question or you say something, but you have to make sure that they're understanding you, right? And if that's the case, then now it's their turn.
Mhm.
Now they get back to you. Now, please make sure you understand them, right? Don't interrupt, be present. And then once that's done, just learn to say thank you. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's just that basic.
Mhm.
But it turned, all those executive meetings were just completely different. Now people is really enjoying. And then I would say that and she shared this with me, it's really pleasurable. She's really proud of teaching this and helping these people grow, because now when you see how they interact in this type of meetings, but also when you see now how they lead their teams, you see this cycle in, like, a lot of respect, a lot of empathy, viewpoints, opinions, and then, the meetings just go faster, more effective, and more productive. But it totally changed. What she said is that production is still in and is still growing, and
Mm.
sales are growing, but with less effort and trouble and conflict. What she has now is just more harmony between the executive uh, leaders. So yeah, I think that's a good example of using something as simple as this.
Well, and they all have an easier life as a result of it. So thank you so much for sharing that story. So what's the magic word, Raul? If they want the little worksheet with the major points, what's the magic word?
Yes, the magic word is cycle. Cycle.
Good. Type in cycle in the comments and we'll see you next week.